know if you were aware that one of the last living Navajo coder died last week. I don't know if any of you were aware of that. And if, for those of you who are not aware of what a Navajo coder is, during World War II, the Navajos there was a corps of Navajo Indians who sent encrypted messages for the United States because the Germans didn't know that language. And so because of them and because of the Tuskegee Airmen, in a lot of ways, the World War II was won. And I think it's a real statement that people who have been extremely oppressed and extremely abused by this government will still give their lives and still work to try and make this place run. So I think that's really important to remember. Our first speaker is Kathleen Tom. Kathleen Tom is a fourth-generation tribal council member. She was born January 11th, 1953. I can't born. Hey girl, go for it.
Yeah. And you can send me gifts too.
Hey, she's down at Spirit Mountain. Send her some gifts. The youngest daughter of Leon Chips and Marianne Kent Tom. Her father served in the Restoration Tribal Council in the 1990s during the creation of Spirit Mountain Casino and the Spirit Mountain Community Fund. After federal termination in 1954, and for those of you who don't quite know what that is, they terminated the tribe. I don't know how you terminate somebody who's here. The Tom family was relocated to Colorado by the federal government in 1955, but eventually moved back to the Grand Ronde area. Her family finally settled in Salem, where she grew up and calls her second home. She attended North Salem High School, Chemeketa Community College, and Western Business College. It didn't take her long to realize she did not want a career sitting behind a desk in an office. And she went to work for her mother, who owned and operated multiple businesses in the Salem area. Prior to her election in 2005 as a board member of the Grand Ronde tribe, she had her own business as a private investigator, which was one of her most interesting and enjoyable jobs. She might know some of you better than you think. Kathleen was elected to Tribal Council in September 2005 and re-elected 2008. During her second term of office, she served as the Tribal Council Secretary. She was re-elected to the Tribal Council in 2011 and is now serving her third term. She is very proud to say that she has followed in her ancestors' footsteps for 4 generations. As a leader of the Grand Ronde tribe, she takes this role as her most challenging but most rewarding. Kathleen's dream is to share her passion and commitment for her tribe with her son, Mason. Her sincere hope is that someday he follows in her footsteps and the footsteps of his ancestors as one of the leaders of the tribe. What better way or job can a person have than to serve the membership of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, she said. My goal is to keep the tribe's story of termination and restoration on the forefront of our fellow Argonians and with key stakeholders. We can never allow the horror of termination to revisit our people again. Ms. Tom lives in Grand Ronde and Salem and is married to Louis King, Programs Officer for Spirit Mountain Community Fund. And I have to say, he is a very delightful man and has the most wonderful cowboy twang I've ever heard. And just a very nice man. I'm going to finish introducing Dr. Richard Twiss, and then I'll just give a little circle back since I got caught up on hair and birthdays. Richard Twiss is, Dr. Richard Twiss is an enrolled member of the Sichaqua. Did I get that right?
I'll fix it.
Okay, thank you. The Sichaqua Lakota Oyate tribe. Whew, I messed that up. From the Rosebud Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. He has been married to Catherine since 1976, and they have raised 4 respectful sons, which nowadays is more than a notion. They co-founded Wiconi International in 1997, and Richard serves as president. Before founding Wiconi International, he was a local business owner and served as a local pastor for 13 years and worked as National Director of Native Ministries for the International Bible Society. Although in the past 15 years, he has spoken in several hundred venues, including conferences in school, universities, churches, businesses, government agencies, as well as lectured and led Native cultural performing arts teams in Pakistan, China, Israel, France, Peru, Australia, Tibet, South Africa, and more than a dozen others, addressing issues of spirituality, justice, and the hope for a better world to tens of thousands. And I want you to know, he canceled stuff on his calendar to come here and be with you tonight. And I really feel like we got a steal on this man. So with all this travel and notoriety, yeah. Thank you, Richard. He is a widely traveled and popular speaker, active as educator, author, and networker among innovative thinkers in the Native North American community. Richard received his doctorate in intercultural studies from Asbury Theological Seminary. He's a board member of several organizations, including Bakke Graduate University in Seattle, Native American Youth and Family Center in Portland, Oregon, and the North American Institute of Indigenous Theological Studies. And NAIA is where he is one of the board members, is having that some of the members couldn't come tonight because they have the Youth and Elders Council tonight. And I really like that idea that the youth, the young people, teenagers and younger children get together with the elders to learn the wisdom, something that the rest of us need to be thinking about doing. He is committed to introducing innovative approaches to higher education in the Western world, born out of an indigenous worldwide framework, and has numerous articles published in scholarly journals, magazines, and books. He teaches as an adjunct professor at Portland State University, Sioux Falls Seminary, and George Fox University, also conducting diversity awareness training seminars. His great passion is actively serving the local Native community in the Portland, Oregon region as a respected spiritual leader. So may I hear from Dr. Richard Twiss. And it just dawned on me, I just got so carried away that I went right into my speakers here without doing my whole thing for you guys. See, we were off for a month and I grew hair and it pulled my brains out. So let's kind of start over a minute here. So I'll give you the background of why we started Race Talks. Race Talks grew out of an effort. I was seeing a lot of things on the news, and what I was mostly hearing was the Rush Limbaughs and Glenn Beck's and their message that was really awful. And part of the reason that I'm so concerned about their message is because by the year 2040, there will be more people of color in the United States than there are white people. And unless we start talking to each other and understanding each other and realizing that we all want the same things and that we are all part of the 99%, because ain't nobody up in here that's got 1%. And if we don't start talking to each other, we're going to do exactly what the 1% wants, which is eliminate each other so they don't have to. So the whole idea is to start discussion and to provide understanding. And we're doing that with the help of facilitated conversations led by Uniting to Understand Racism facilitators. And right now I'd like to introduce Maceo Pettis, who is one of the co-founders of Uniting to Understand Racism.
Thank you, Donna. Here you are. There's a piece of literature on each table, and it talks about the interracial dialogue discussions. We call them trainings, but they're discussions that happen. We're inviting people who are interested to sign up for one of those future dialogues. We actually have two starting tomorrow, community dialogues. It may be possible to get one or two more people into those. There's usually no more than about 16 people in it. And it is a 6-week series, the same day on 6 weeks, every day for the 6 weeks. And it does involve some fairly intensive discussions, open and honest discussions about race. This is a kind of a small sample, if you will, a taste of what we do for 6 weeks in those dialogues. Additionally, if you look on the back of the evaluation form, to sign up for that, we encourage you, if you are interested and feel it's useful in your workplace, to take that information to your employer, to take it to your HR person. These are wonderful, what we're doing here, but to impact change, you've also got to get into the economic system, and those who run the economic system, that means those who hire large institutions as well as businesses, and get some cultural change in those as well. So I thought I'd mention that. So I'll give it back to Donna.
Also, I have over here a young lady, Amanda Preacher from OPB, Oregon Public Broadcasting, and she has a quick announcement.
I direct something called the Public Insight Network for OPB. It's a way for community members to have a voice in the news, to share your experience with our newsroom, and perhaps even serve as a source for an OPB news story. How it works is you sign up as a community member. You give a little bit of information about yourself, what you do, where you work. If you want to share things like race, income, ethnicity, you're welcome to. You don't have to participate. And then we call on you when we're doing stories that are relevant to things that you know about. You might be a small business owner, or you might want to share your experience going to Catholic school, or you might want to share your experience, what it's like being African American and growing up in Portland. Whatever it is that you want to share, we'd like to hear those stories. So in the interest of telling a larger community narratives about race and how race and ethnicity is being discussed in our community, I invite you all to participate in the Public Insight Network. Stories from the Public Insight Network show up on OPB's airwaves every week. Really, it is a great way to help shape the news and to help some of the conversations that happen in here reach a larger audience, so we can really shape the broader social conversation about race and ethnicity. I have a particular query out right now that's about how our lives are shaped by our racial identities. So if you fill this out, I'll send that to you, and if you feel compelled to participate in that particular, then I welcome you to do so. Thanks, Donna.
Now we are on to our program, and I'm so excited to introduce Kathleen Tom and Dr. Richard Twiss.
Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only first-timer here, so you guys really probably don't have anything to judge my speech on, so that's a good thing. And let's have a shout out for Capricorns. Yay, Capricorns. And tomorrow is my birthday, and anyone who wants to give a gift, you can give it to my address to my public relations person over here. My name is Kathleen Tom. I'm one of 9 tribal council members for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. And I don't know if everybody here knows this, but there are 9 federally recognized tribes here in Oregon. A lot of people don't know that. But I want to tell you about my tribe. But first, I want to do some housekeeping. I want to introduce our staff here because it's a traditional thing to introduce our people. Our public relations person for our tribe is Siobhan Taylor, which we love. And Dean Rhodes, our editor of our newspaper, Smoke Signals, maybe some of you get that. And our photographer is floating around here, Michelle, and she's here tonight too. So anyway, I want to tell you a little story about myself. I guess that's what Race Talks are about, is about yourself. But first I want to welcome you to the homelands of the Grand Ronde. These are the ceded lands of the Grand Ronde Indians. Ceded lands are the lands that we used to have. And I brought kind of a little map here so you could see what lands that were ceded for this whole Willamette Valley is the ceded lands of the Grand Ronde. And so you're sitting here today in our homelands, and we welcome you here. And we're glad you're here tonight, as I am. As I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about Grand Ronde. First of all, I want to say that I'm of mixed race. I'm half Irish, and I'm half Indian. My father is full-blooded Indian, and my mother is full-blooded Irish. So I was raised in a house with different values from different sides of my family, which I'm very thankful for. I want to show you a picture of my father. You may have seen him on the posters. He is the face of the Spirit Mountain Community Fund, and this is my father, and I'm very proud of him. He's 83 years old, and he's doing wonderful. I wanted to talk to you about, I was a little frightened about coming here tonight because I wasn't sure what I could talk about in this race talk and what was going to be covered and what kind of questions I was going to be asked. But I want to tell you a time that I was asked to come to speak down at a restaurant. It was called the Cyprius Restaurant. And our biologist was supposed to be going down there. They cooked a traditional food using traditional foods from Native Americans, but they did it with a twist. Well, I figured that the biologist was going to be there and they were going to tell them all about camas and how it was dug and Wapato and all of the things that we used to do a long, long time ago. Well, the biologist couldn't go to that dinner and neither could the forestry. So I was there by myself and I was wondering, oh my God, what am I going to tell these people? I was an urban Indian. I lived in town. I never dug Wapato. I've never dug camas. I've eaten it, but I've never done any of those things. I worried all night long what I was going to say, who I was going to reach out to. So the following morning I woke up and I was sweating. My dad calls and I told him, can you believe it? The staff isn't going to be there to back me up in what Wapato and camas and all of these things were. And he listened to me and I said, what am I going to do, Dad? And he said, well, you can't tell people something you don't know. And that was true. I went to the dinner, nobody asked me a question. I ate some great food and it was a wonderful evening. So I'm only going to tell you what I do know. I know how to be half Irish and half Indian. My mother, God love her, she was a pioneer for single women and a single Irish Catholic woman. My mother had 4 values that she taught to us. One was never to tell a lie, never steal, never take the Lord's name in vain. We all know that if you're Catholic here. And never back down if you're right. She always taught me that. Never back down if you're right. And so I've learned that wonderful value from her. But the bigger, she had a 5th one, which was the Irish curse. And I don't know if anybody knows about the Irish curse, but I never had to learn about it, but my mother was very big at giving the Irish curse to a lot of people that said anything about her children or her family. So I don't know if they're still walking on earth or not. My father was a very different kind of person, very traditional in values. My father taught me my first language, and that was body language. We were never hit as children. We were never scolded in public. We were never belittled, but you got the look. And if you know the Indian language of body language and you get the look, you know what you're not supposed to be doing. So I learned that from my father growing up. Growing up in Grand Ronde, there was a lot of tribal people around, a lot of Native people. When I first, when the tribe was terminated, my family, we moved to Dallas, Oregon. I think that's the first place I experienced discrimination. They had water fountains for blacks and Indians, and then water fountains for the non-Native people. And I think that was the first time I realized I was Indian, was back there when I went to grade school there in Dallas. And when I went to Nebraska, never ever experienced prejudice until I went to Nebraska to see my Irish side of my family. And we were Native American. And it's very different there, the way they feel about Native people back in Nebraska. And in fact, my Irish family came out and said, how did you guys do all of this? How did you get all of the things that you have? They were very stunned that Native people could be business people and be successful and have things. And so those are the only two times I've been discriminated against. I've been able to live in an assimilated family, both sides, and flourish. I'm a 4th child of my parents. the youngest child, the baby. And growing up in my family was very, just like any normal kid. High school, we made friends. We were called Tonto and Running Virgin and Running Nose, but everybody kind of thought that was okay. But I want to tell you about the tribe, where we are. We were terminated in 1954, and the tribe was told to go out there in the real world and do something else. And a lot of us had to leave because there was no work there. So once we were terminated, we went to other places. A lot of other families were left to, well, it was called the Relocation Act. And as the doctor and I were talking, we were in the same town at the same time. His family was relocated and so was mine. It didn't take my family very long to figure out that we didn't belong in Colorado, and my dad wasn't going to be a drafter. He'd never drafted in his life, but that was the plan that the government had for our family, was to move us there, and my dad was going to be a drafter, and without any funding, we were just put there and said, okay, you're now a drafter. Well, that didn't happen, so it didn't take us long to come back here and figure out what we were going to do with our lives. And one of them was that we went out into the other world and started working. That's how I got to be an urban Indian. However, in 1989 and 1984, our tribe was restored. It was one of the happiest days of our lives because for a long time we weren't Indian. People said that we were terminated. And you can't terminate people that are still there living and still walking and still practicing their cultures. And so in 1984, we were restored. It was something else. We were always there, but all of a sudden we're restored. We had all of our rights back. It would have never happened without the wisdom of our elders, there was 3 of our elders that got all of us meeting again, having powwows, having council meetings, talking to our people, gathering them. And with the help of some politicians, Les Coyne and Elizabeth First, they helped us realize that could happen, and it happened for us. In the short time that we've been restored, I think a lot of people have seen what we've done in that short time. We had treaties, 7 ratified treaties that the government said that they were going to furnish us with housing, education, and none of those things came true for us. And so what restoration helped us do was to get back up on our feet and become business people and go out and be successful. And now we have so many things to offer our tribal people that live all over the United States and different countries, and we're able to afford their health care. We give them health care, education, housing, social services programs, and we do a lot of things for our youth. So in such a short time, we have come a long way, and I just want to thank you all for listening to my stories. And again, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. So I'll let Dr.
Well, it's an honor to be with you this evening for the couple of minutes that we have together. Thank you, Donna, for the kind invitation and the promise of a massive honorarium check worth $10 of chits at McMenamins. Awesome. And thank you, Kathleen, for your story. And we both ended up in Denver as young people when we left our reservation. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my story, then we'll shift a little bit and talk about some of the issues, particularly facing Native people in the cities, in the country, then a little larger narrative of colonialism and how colonization has served to promote certain ideological realities, economically, politically, religiously, socially, etc., and how those systems, those colonial systems or neo-colonial systems are still active and powerful and engaged, and how we can engage with some of those things in our own lives, in our neighborhoods, to help work for justice for all. All people are created equal, just some were created more equally in the American narrative of Euro-American story and history. So somebody said recently, with all this stuff with immigration, et cetera, that we're the ones that should have had stricter immigration laws. That, in all likelihood, a lot of the problems today might have been averted or lessened in any case. So my father's an Oglala Lakota from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and my mother's a Sichangu Lakota from the Rosebud Sioux Reservation, also in South Dakota. Now I'm also part white, but I can't prove it.
That's right.
So actually my great-grandma's name was McLean, and then I had a Frenchman named Larrivee and an Englishman named Twiss, who actually ended up in Pine Ridges. How those names came among our people. So my mom was a Larrivee from Rosebud, and I was born in '54 there. And during that time of the native story, settled on reservations and all kinds of American policies geared toward assimilation and social engineering, it was a difficult period growing up. And so my mom didn't want us growing up with that kind of violence, unemployment, that sort of deal. So she moved us from the res, and that's how we ended up in Silverton, Oregon. So I went from grade 4 through grade 12 as a Silverton Fox, which was the name of the high school mascot, which was pretty tough in the 70s, being a fox. And so my mom left Rosebud and moved to Pine Ridge, where she met my dad. They got married. I was conceived. My mom moved back they got divorced, and then my mom moved back to Rosebud, where I was born. So I was born among my mother's people in Rosebud. And she later married another guy, and then she married another man from the reservation, and he was a pretty violent, abusive alcoholic. And so my goal in life as a little boy was to get big enough to beat the shit out of him with a baseball bat. But they got divorced before I was 10, so I never saw him again. And then by the time we ended up out west, away from the reservation and relatives, not having a dad, I sort of went crazy, so drugs and alcohol and being in jail and all that sort of stuff. So that became a pattern in my life, and I ended up in jail in Kelso, Washington, and I ended up here and there. But after high school, I went back to South Dakota and to go to this little community college, St. English University on Rosebud. And at that time, AIM was recruiting people to join them in the Trail of Broken Treaties protest to Washington, D.C. So in 1972, about 600 Native folks went to D.C. and ended up taking over the Bureau of Indian Affairs office building. And we occupied the building for 8 days, surrounded by federal marshals and tear gas and dogs, protesting the federal government's breaking of all of these treaties. And somebody said that when the Europeans came, we had all the land and they had the Bible. And then some years later, we had the Bible and they had all the land. And so during those treaty-making years, some 600-700, that every treaty is a federal, congressionally ratified piece of law. And yet the government broke them all. So we were protesting that fact. So I was 18 years old at the time. And that's when I began to hate white people, to hate Christianity, because my mom had grown up in a boarding school on the reservation. And so beginning in the late 1800s and on into the middle of the next century, 1920s, 30s, the government, at one time there were 415 boarding schools where for a period of time all Native children were required by law to attend these schools. And so I think Chemaw was built right after the turn of the century and was one of the first ones here in this part of the country. But the Catholics ran the boarding schools on our reservations. And to hear all my aunties and uncles tell their stories, my grandparents went to those boarding schools. So all the abuse, the violence, the trauma was devastating. So imagine your 4-, 5-, 6-year-old children being taken from you and sent to Denver and being sent to Los Angeles and being sent some other part of the country or maybe across the state or somewhere to be indoctrinated by this new government. And in time, most of those, a large percentage were operated by Christian denominations and organizations. So now also to be indoctrinated into their religion. So it was the Catholics who ran them on our reservation. And so I began to say, well, if Catholicism and Christianity are the same thing, then phooey on the white man's religion. Began to open up my own soul towards hatred for all the historical things that had happened. So then I went through a period, and I'll talk about that maybe in part 2 of my rambling narrative. So my father was in the military, and I didn't know him. I met him when I was in the 3rd grade. He was at Fort Lewis, and he came by to meet me for the first time, and he bought me a new seat for my bicycle. Then he left, and then I saw him the next time when I was 28 years old. And so the brokenness that came about as a result of these boarding schools, I think, is the fundamental reason for the brokenness that we still experience in our Native North American communities. We have off-the-charts alcoholism and teen suicide on our reservations and all kinds of socioeconomic health disparities today. And I think it can all be traced back to the fact you hear of these little boys and girls taken from their parents' love and nurture and care, sent to a boarding school where it becomes pure survivalist and all the psychology and trauma of pure survival. And then the abuse and the violence that takes place there. Then they go home, they marry, they have kids, then their kids are taken away. So it's going to take more than 50 years, 100 years maybe, to begin to fully recover from that kind of immeasurable trauma. And the horror of it was that it preyed upon innocent boys and girls as a clearly stated policy of assimilation on the part of the federal government, that the educators would become those who began to actually do the work of assimilation through American education, i.e. with a strong Christian influence. So colonialism comes from an invading power, and the goal is to eradicate a people's sense of themselves, their story, their identity, their histories, their talents, their worth, their dignity, their intelligence, their language, their music, their art, ultimately their culture. So the goal of colonization is to replace a people's sense of themselves and replace it with that of the colonizer, so that at the end of the day, the final hurdle eventually becomes an internal self-hatred. So you hear people saying at different times, well, in the African American context, black on black violence and this and that. So that's like the goal. It's like, look what they're doing to themselves. No, look what you created so that this becomes a new reality. So in our Native communities, so much of that kind of stuff goes on. So until we can find healing, that we'll still deal with these kind of deals. So for me, a big part of our story and our sense of being is connected to the land. In the Lakota way, we would talk about a 7-direction tradition. So you have the cardinal directions, northeast, southwest, then you have up, then you have down, and then you have in. And this is a place of humility. This is a place of spirituality. And yet spirituality and life is found in all those things. So being rooted to the land and the way the Creator loves us, the way Mother Earth provides for us. She feeds us and nurtures us in the water and the air and the oxygen and this whole self-interdependent ecosystem. That's all the love of the Creator. And there's goodness and there's life and there's love and there's nurture in all of that. And so many of our ceremonies reflect some of those kinds of spiritual presence of the Creator reality. So I've learned to deal with a lot of my stuff over the years by finding hope in something greater than myself. Now, somebody asked me recently, I was back on the East Coast, and they said, you're a real Indian, aren't you? I said, yeah. They said, well, I could tell because I could see it in your cheekbones. So I said, really? I hate it when people stare at my ass. So the other day I was at this group, a group of men, and this guy, we were crossing in this hallway at this function. He said, hey, Chief, how you doing? So I said, it's not a good thing, so don't call me chief. He said, all right. So the next day or later that same day, he says, Chief, did you have a good day? I said, yeah, but I really prefer it if you don't call me chief. He says, all right, Chief. So he's a little bit older than me, so I'm trying to be respectful. He's like an elder. So anyway, the next day, he shakes my hand each time, and so the next day he says, did you have a good night, Chief? Did you sleep well? So I said, okay, we got to talk. And so here's the deal. It's disrespectful and offensive when you call me chief. If you call an African-American person a nigger, or this person a wop, and all the other kind of stereotypical pejorative terms, these are offensive things. And so it's offensive when you call me that. In the Lakota way, I want to be Chewichash. I want to be a common human person. We don't have chiefs and strive to be great and be recognized for greatness as chiefs. We don't even use that kind of language. So he goes, wow, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I was calling you chief because I recognize these qualities in you, so I was meaning it in a very complimentarian way. So he said, forgive my ignorance, because I just didn't know. I said, well, that's okay, then we're cool. So then he shook my hand again, and he dislocated my finger for the third time. Because I had a basketball injury, so this finger pops out of joint all the time. So I said, and another thing, when you come to our native communities, don't smash our hands. We don't shake hands like that. Like, white guys have a need to pee on the bush in the yard by shaking hands, and there's a value of strength and courage and confidence attached to how much you smash the other dude's hand. And so like this whole notion of worldview, how we attach value to behaviors, which is one of the big problems of interracial communication and dialogue. So it's like the native guy says, I don't get the white people. He says, when they blow their nose, they take out a sacred cloth and they blow their nose, and then they look at it for, must be color and consistency, I'm not sure. And then they fold it back up and they save it. Jeez, why do they save their boogers like that? That's like, maybe they don't want spirits to get their boogers and do things to them if it goes. Because the Indian guy, he just goes, and then you're done with it. But those white people save snot. So we have all ways of thinking about time and space. And as indigenous people, we have ways of thinking about creation and community versus individuality. About nature as the thou, not an it. About space as being sacred, not utilitarian. And as communities are places of nurture and belonging, not places of accomplishment and achievement. And so I'll talk about that in just a second here about, as we have race relations and race conversations and interreligious dialogue and all of that, and I'm really keen. I think that stuff is so important. But unless we begin to realize that the influence of worldview, that will bypass an important component in what it takes to build a thriving community and a healthy family in the world that we live in. So one time my son Ian, or Andrew, he was playing with a friend of his who was a little Caucasian boy, and his name was Aaron. So Aaron went home and he told his parents, he says, Mom and Dad, you know that Andrew Twiss, he's half Indian and half human. So I thought it was pretty funny. So it's like even those jokes, it's like you go, can we laugh? Will that be offensive if I laugh or not? Or does that seem funny? But so getting through areas of ignorance, because we all swim in relative pools of ignorance regarding how other people think and behave and act. So I'll close with this part here then. The idea that culture has like two fundamental dimensions. One of them is the visible and the invisible. So the visible are all of the behaviors, the way people act. And the other part are the beliefs, assumptions, and values that give meaning to the behavior. And so in one culture, this means like, good job, A-okay, right on. But in other cultures, it's an anatomical part of your body that releases waste from one's body. So if you go like that, you're calling somebody a butthole in another culture. So if you go to another cultural context, they may behave the same, but it might mean something completely different. So if we never take the time to know and to love our neighbor, then we will be bound by our own ethnocentric bias. And every person in this room, red, yellow, black, and white, you are narrow-minded, ethnocentric, with limited vision, as am I. And the reality is, there are no exclusions. So that's my mantra that I teach in university. So we say, I am ethnocentric, narrow-minded, with limited vision. So repeat that with me, if you don't mind. Entertain me here. So I am ethnocentric, narrow-minded, with limited vision. Okay, look at somebody at your table and say, you are ethnocentric, narrow-minded, with limited vision. And there are no exceptions.
No exceptions.
Okay.
That's a hard act to follow. I think I might have to sing. He asked me if I was going to sing. I said, oh no, I'm leaving the singing up to you. We've been asked to talk 5 more minutes or 7 more minutes, so what a great speech. Thank you. That was great. So I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about for 7 minutes, but I was glad that he explained the cheekbones and the ass, so now I know what everybody's looking at. So it's a good thing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And all you Indian women out there, now you know. The last 7 minutes, I guess I want to talk about the tribe. We have 5,000 tribal members, and like I said, they're spread out throughout the country. And we provide services no matter where you live. We have a wonderful cultural department that we are bringing back our traditions, just like the doctor said, that some of those things were lost for many, many years. I remember those things, I remember those songs, I remember that, but they were lost when we were terminated. So those are all coming back to us. I don't know if any of you have ever been out to Grand Ronde, but a lot of people just identify us with the Spirit Mountain Casino. But there's such a bigger picture to our tribe and our tribal people. And so as we have been growing, and we have been growing, we have brought in all of these different areas of things that we were put on a shelf and forgotten for a while. We've been bringing them out. We just got finished with our longhouse and had a traditional opening of that. And it was very, to think about all of the tribal people that were brought from the whole Willamette Valley, from the northern shores of the northern edge of California and on the southern edge of Washington. Those were our people. And to have them brought all into one place in Grand Ronde is, when you get into our longhouse, it's really quite emotional to sit there and think about your ancestors that walked that trail of tears from Table Rock when the government brought us back up there. That's a very sad story, but it's a story, and it's a story that people really don't know about, that the tribe went through. A lot of the tribes throughout the country went through. But again, we have to talk about our success, and our success is that we're still here. We are still a tribe, and we're still telling our story. And our story is important. As an Oregonian, there's not an Oregonian here that doesn't love this Oregon. And we're in this together. We're a community. One of the things that we believed in, and have always believed in, is giving back to our communities. And so we started our philanthropic arm, Spirit Mountain Casino, our Spirit Mountain Community Fund. And we've given over $55 million to the state of Oregon in contributions to nonprofits just like this one to make these kind of things possible. So we're giving people. I think Indian people have always been giving people. And we like to laugh, and we of course love to eat. So I think that's my 5 minutes. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to interacting and questions from the audience and spending a little time. Thank you.
So Portland has the 9th largest urban Indian community in the U.S. There's some 38,000 Native folks who call the Portland, Vancouver area home. And on the table, there is not enough for everybody, but making the invisible visible. So if you go online, if you just Google search "making the invisible visible," it will take you to this full-color document. And this document will give you some of the history of the city. And it will tell you some of the tribes, how we got here as a major relocation center. And it's a free download as a PDF, so I would encourage you to get to do that, to get to know who some of your neighbors are. And there are several organizations too. I want to highlight one of them is the Native American Youth and Family Center, just down a few blocks here in Northeast Columbia. And I see our executive director, Nicole Maher, is here. And they have a grade 9 through 12 high school academy in an effort to address some of the issues of education, because we have the lowest graduation rates and highest recidivism rates and all that kind of stuff. And so through the vision of the elders of the community, how do we address the fact that we have so few of our Native students who graduate? So it's just been a few years old now, and I think we have the highest graduation rates of Native students in any public school district. Is that correct? Through the vision and leadership of the elders, and certainly through Nicole and the staff. Then there's a full range of social service programs, and we're always looking for volunteers. So if you want to find a way to get involved in the Native community, not in the old sort of benefactor, beneficiary paradigm, but as people who are engaged with one another for the common good. So now there are certainly dynamics and issues of privilege and whiteness and victimization and all that kind of stuff, but I want to invite us to consider our community beyond those sort of binary dimensions which always pit us against each other in an aggressive and competitive kind of way, oftentimes unhealthy, but to begin to think about ourselves as neighbors. And how do you love your neighbor if you don't know who your neighbor is? And one of the ways is just meeting together with a group of folks on a regular basis. And in terms of public places, there's a powwow coming up at Portland Community College on Saturday, January 21st. So how many of you in the room have never been to a powwow? Okay, so like more of you have than not, so that's great. So I encourage you to go as a place, a gathering place, eat some good food, listen to some great music, see some beautiful dancing, and all of that. And then there are other organizations. There's an organization called the Native American Rehabilitation Association Northwest that are doing excellent work around issues of substance abuse and addictions, and they have a full service patient clinic and outpatient clinic, and they run the only medical clinic in town. And so these are all places that you can go and get involved in the community. So I think 1 in 14 Anglo kids are living in poverty. I think 1 in 2 Native kids are living in poverty here in the area. And we have a huge disparity in terms of the number of Native kids in foster care compared to the other kids within the system. And Eddie Sherman here, he works for NICWA, which is the Native American, or the National Indian Child Welfare Association. I'm pretty close, I think. Might be Nigerian, but I think it. And so their organization is working with child advocacy issues here and around the country. And so these are ways that we can get involved in our community. So lastly, we would say in the Lakota language, we would call Creator Tunkashila, grandfather. And grandfather could be President Obama, grandfather could be or Tunkashila could be my paternal grandfather, and Tunkashila could be the Creator. That's the idea of one and only. So over the years, I found that at the base of a lot of our dialogue, if we can find this place of spirituality, that the earth is alive, and there's a life force. And beyond what we can see and feel in one sense, there's this love and this kindness that comes to us from Tunkashila, grandfather, or Wakantanka, or Kichimanitu, or a host of other names, or Jehovah, or God. And you put your name in there. So I want to invite you to consider who is Tunkashila, grandfather, who is Savior, who is Messiah, who is Mother, who is nurturer, who is caregiver. And it's in this place that we can find some common language and community to begin talking about that. So I would say I'm a follower of the ways of Jesus as a Lakota man. I would not say that I'm a Christian, because I'm not, in the sense of how many people think about that. But I find in this person Jesus teachings and authority that address the very real issues that keep me from being a good husband to my wife because of my selfishness or my ingratitude or my anger, that help me be a father to my 4 sons, never having had one. So I find in these ways the power to be the human being that I really want to be. And I think that's who all of you in this room really want to be too, is people that make a difference in your world, in your family, in your life. So that's my simple invitation as we address all these social, political, economic issues of justice and oppression, looking for the common good of all people everywhere. Where do we find the grace and the power to do that? So I'm going to close with this song. So it simply is it's a song of thanksgiving, or a Thanksgiving song. Aha, wado, aha, waikana ito, hey, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, Yahweh, Yahweh, Naya, hey, 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 Yahweh, 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 Naya, hey, aha, wado, aha, waikana ito, hey, hey, yo, hey, hey, Yahweh, Yahweh, Naya, hey, hey, Yahweh, 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 Naya, hey, aha, wado, aha, waikana ito, hey, hey, yo, hey, Yahweh, Yahweh, Naya, hey, Yahweh, 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 Naya, Mitakwe Oyase, all my relatives, I hope.
I have one more announcement. We are having the gathering of our First Nations Northwest tribes, and all tribes, at the Oregon State Fairgrounds Pavilion on January 28th. It's free, it's open to everyone. Please come, all of the tribes come. It's a wonderful gathering and you're all welcome, so thank you.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Kathleen and Richard. Let's hear it for them again. Richard said something that kind of resonates for me. I like to say, he was saying about you volunteering and helping and how it can make such a big difference, and having a dream and acting on that. This was a dream that I had, and I acted on it, and all of you are here because of it. And you've been, oh God, don't start.
Let's sing happy birthday.
My girlfriend I've known since first grade said, I didn't know you were so emotional. So anyway, I'm working through this. So I believe that if a butterfly flaps its wings, the effects are felt throughout the universe. I'm not so sure it's important that that butterfly's name is Donna, but I do know it's important that it does its work. And I think it's important that all of us do our part to make this a better world and to provide more understanding. So please get involved. Please get involved. And I have a couple of quick announcements to make. The Grand Ronde picture was taken by the newspaper. We use that without their permission. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. It was the Longhouse. Also, we have a new sponsor for Race Talks. And he mentioned one of the former members. It's the Human Relations Commissions for the City of Portland. So with the members of the Human Relations, if you hear present, former Human Relations Commission people, Eddie, I know you in here somewhere. Where are you? Stand up. And Eddie and I were on the Human Relations Commission. I still am. And please come to the meetings. Please get involved. It is so important that we do this work. One of our topics we're going to be working on this year is human trafficking. So that's a new one we're adding. Also, the evaluations are extremely important. Some of you will be leaving at the break, I know that, but please fill out an evaluation before you go and put it on the back table. And I would love to have you come back again, tell your friends, bring your family, bring your kids. Our children need to be a part of this. The audience here is extremely mature. And I think we need to have younger people. You can also visit the website, McMenamins website, and the past programs are on the website. So go to McMenamins.com, or you can, put in the topic, or you can even put my name in. I was blown away. I'm on YouTube. So you can even put my name on there. But thank you for coming, and please stay for the facilitated discussion. Maceo, you're going to say something about it?
We have someone with an announcement you'd like to share. Can you finish?
Well, I'm finished.
Oh.
So the facilitators, okay.
Wouldn't mind reading this. I am Love Richardson, and I'm with Oregon Health and Science University, and I represent the Native American Diversity Center there. And there's a presentation. I'm Love Richardson from Oregon Health and Science University. I'm also on tribal council for the Nipmuc Nation, and I represent the Native American Recruitment and Diversity Office for Oregon Health and Science University. We have a presentation on January 31st that's welcome and free to the public. There will be refreshments. It's from noon to 1. It's called Party Like It's 1491, Diagnosing Colonialization and Predominantly White Institutions. So they're going to talk about Native American mascots and things like that that our youth and anyone in academia has to experience being Native American in a white institution. So you're welcome to attend.
Where?
Oregon Health and Science University. If you Google it and look to their diversity office, you'll find it.